What's up, everybody? It is starting to feel like spring here on the coast of North Carolina. And you know what springtime means? Topwater redfish. That is right. The fish are starting to do a little more floating on the surface and starting to eat a little more aggressively. And they're starting to eat topwater, which is awesome. I thought I'd go over with y'all today a few of my favorite topwater plugs, how I like to fish them, and especially how I like to fish them in the spring. When it might be a little bit tougher to get a fish to eat a topwater. So I'm going to lay them out here and go over them with you, and hopefully you'll learn a little something from this and something you can apply to your fish in the spring. All right, boom. All right, let's talk topwater plugs for redfish. It's springtime, fish are still really schooled up, but the water temperatures are rising. And what that does is it brings those redfish from sitting on the bottom, where that's where the majority of the warmth is, to on these warmer days, floating up on the surface of the water. And when they're on the surface, it's a lot easier to get them to eat a topwater plug or any type of topwater bait, whether it be a fly or a whopper plopper or anything like that. There is a lot of topwater plugs on the market, a lot of different types of topwaters on the market. Some made for redfish, some made for saltwater fish, some not made for redfish that still work great. Today I'm going to focus on my 6 go-to topwater plugs. Every one of these topwaters I've got here today is a walk the dog style bait. Some sound a little different, some walk just a little different, but they're all walk the dog baits. And I feel like for the most part, a walk the dog style topwater bait is probably the most effective topwater for redfish. You start fishing for those bigger redfish, sometimes chuggers and big popping topwater plugs, topwater chuggers. Those work a little bit better. They're creating more noise. Those fish are more aggressive. If you throw a big chugging bait in shallow water for slot size and slightly over slot size redfish, it's probably gonna spook them. Probably not gonna eat that bait. Not saying they won't, but they're probably not going to. What I love about topwater plugs is I feel like they're great search baits for redfish. They're moving water, they're making a lot of noise, they're not making too much noise, but I feel like the fish can feel the presence of that bait from further away than, let's say, a soft plastic or something like that, and you're gonna draw fish in from further away. You might not get that fish to always eat the plug or hook that fish, but you're at least gonna move fish and know they're in the area, which definitely helps you can come back and fish it with something a little more subtle if the topwater's not quite cutting it, but it's a really good search bait for redfish. Sometimes in the spring, I'll size it down a little bit and fish a smaller spook, Heddon spook style bait, or a small skitter walk. So I got these 6 baits here. I got another tackle box full of topwaters. I might go over a few of those. But these 6 baits here are the 6 main baits I'm fishing. All right, we're gonna start with the Rapala topwater baits that I've got here. So this is the larger skitter walk. This golden mullet color is probably my top fished color for redfish here in North Carolina, as well as when I'm down in Louisiana if I'm throwing topwater plugs. I don't know what it is about this color, but I feel like the fish really like it. And I'll fish this early in the mornings. I'll also fish at midday. It doesn't seem to matter too much. I will change colors up though. First thing in the morning, I'm usually gonna fish a darker topwater plug. And as that light starts to increase, I'll change my colors and come a little brighter with my colors. That's when I'll start fishing like the chartreuses and the pinks and the brighter oranges. You kind of follow that brightness of the sun, and then as it starts to die back off again, I'll change my topwater colors from those bright colors back into these darker colors as the sun starts setting. But these Rapala Skitter walks, they're great topwaters. They've got a little rattle inside of them. They make a good noise. It's not too aggressive of a rattle. They walk really well. They're a great topwater plug to fish. Like I said, this golden mullet is the main color I fish for these for the Rapala Skitter walks. But I've got tons of other colors here in the box, but this is mine and a lot of other people I know that love the topwater fish, their favorite color skitter walk as well. That's the golden mullet by Rapala. There's 2 sizes you can get in these skitter walks. And a lot of times if the fish are coming up and swiping at the larger bait, not necessarily completely committing to it, I'll swap out to this shorter skitter walk. And a lot of times it's a little quieter, a little more subtle movement on the top, and the fish sometimes will destroy it. You need to throw this on a lighter rod though. It's not quite as heavy as this bigger skitter walk, and it's a little bit tougher to throw, but those two size skitter walks work great, and I fish them a lot. I've got tons of them in this tackle box and scattered all through my garage. A newer Rapala topwater bait that they've come out with is the Skitter V. I just started fishing this last year. It kicks back and forth a lot more than, let's say, the normal skitter walk. It's got kind of a keeled belly on it that comes down to a V. That's why they call it the Skitter V. And you can really get that thing to cut back and forth real nicely, where the skitter walk is more of just like a subtle walk the dog kind of back and forth. These Skitter Vs have a really nice action in the water. I've got a few colors for the Skitter V as well, but this golden mullet color is definitely, I guess they call it the gold on the Skitter V, but this golden color for these Skitter Vs works really well too. I've also done really good for trout with these Skitter Vs. The one thing you gotta watch out with on these Skitter V baits is the hooks are a slightly lighter gauge wire. And if you're fishing for redfish with them and you hook into a bigger fish, I have seen them straighten those hooks out a little bit. So a lot of times I'll buy a pack of VMC treble hooks and use some split ring pliers, pop those split rings open, slide these hooks off, and puts a little bit stronger treble hooks on there. So those are the Rapala topwater baits, all walk the dog style baits like I was talking about. All right, the next topwater plug I want to go over is made by Heddon. This is the One Knocker Spook. One of my favorite, if not, maybe this past summer, this did become my favorite topwater plug to throw for redfish. But it's the One Knocker, also a great trout topwater plug. But this One Knocker's got a nice loud rattle in it. I fish a lot of these Heddon baits, a lot of these Heddon topwaters, but this One Knocker has a really good sound, and this color, this chartreuse over silver, and then with a chartreuse belly, has just worked really, really well for me. I had some really good midday topwater fishing for redfish with these Heddon One Knockers. I think that has a lot to do with the color, but also the way that bait walks and the sound of that rattle inside the bait. It's a little more streamlined of a body, a little more like cylinder shaped body than the skitter walks. And that therefore it has a slightly different walking action, but still pretty similar to the skitter walks. These Heddon baits, I would say I've been fishing these longer than anything else. But this One Knocker is one I've just picked up more recently and have done really, really well with it. When they weren't coming up and eating darker topwaters, this chartreuse One Knocker really worked well. So the next and the last topwater that I really want to go over, or the next and the last brand I really want to go over is MirrOlure. MirrOlure's got a bunch of different sizes, some different pitches, and lots of different colors. But the two that I fish for redfish are usually the Top Dog, which is one of their largest, and the She Dog, which is slightly smaller but a lot more loud pitch. When I'm really wanting to cover water well, this louder She Dog works really well. It's got a chrome belly on it and a slightly darker chartreuse back. I feel like fish see it and hear it from a greater distance. These Top Dogs, they're a little bit longer. They've still got a great pitch to them, not quite as loud as the She Dog. And they've got more of a slightly smoother transition from side to side when you're walking the dog with these. But the Top Dog is another great one. So one thing that I'll do with these topwaters, like I was saying with the Skitter V, is I'll oftentimes change the hooks out to a stronger treble hook. Some of these come with great treble hooks right out of the box, especially these MirrOlures, but I like to put some VMC. If I'm going treble hooks, I'll use VMC treble hooks. Just slightly thicker wire gauge, a little bit stronger hook. You just don't want to bend fish out. But one thing I've been doing too over the past couple years is switching over to single inline hooks for my topwaters. A lot of times you get those pesky pinfish or small jack or bluefish coming up and just popping the back of your plug, and you'll oftentimes snag them with those treble hooks. With the inline hooks, those smaller fish typically aren't going to get hooked. And when you do hook a larger fish, they seem to stay hooked a lot better. A lot of times a fish will come up and eat a topwater plug with trebles, and you'll get him back to the boat and he'll be just kind of barely hooked on the side of the face or the back or something like that. You don't get those hookups with the inline hooks, but when they eat the plug well and that hook gets buried, you lose a lot less fish with the inline hooks. They both have their benefits and they both have kind of their negatives to them. Definitely, if you're fishing some of those lighter wire trebles though, it's nice to bump up to a heavier gauge wire hook. just to keep from bending those hooks out. So oftentimes when topwater fishing, you'll have a fish come up and roll your topwater plug or kind of bump it but not fully commit to it. There's a few different things you can change up if that happens. I might be going too fast or too slow, and just changing that up can oftentimes be the difference between a fish kind of just rolling your plug and actually coming up and just completely engulfing it. Sometimes a little bit smaller topwater plug can be the ticket. Other times color is the ticket. You know, you got to think about where the sun is in the sky and how silhouetted that bait is. And so fishing a lighter colored plug or a brighter colored plug sometimes can be the ticket. And then other times it can be in that lower light, fishing a darker plug. A question I get asked a lot is, what is the best tide to throw topwater plugs at? You know, there's probably a lot of different answers to that question, but you can catch redfish on topwater at any tide. But I really do enjoy fishing a mid to high tide with a topwater plug, when you can work it over oyster bars, when you can work it over, you know, throw up to the edge of that grass that might be a little bit flooded and working it back out from the grass. I feel like it works really well on that mid to high tide. But I've had a lot of great days in the tight creeks, throwing topwaters right down the middle of the little ditch in these tight creeks and working them back to the boat at dead low tide, and had really good topwater fishing. So it really just depends on where those fish are holding. They're gonna be holding in different areas at different tides. But like I was saying, with topwaters being a great search bait, it's harder to find fish sometimes at a higher tide. And so throwing topwaters that have a decent amount of noise and water movement can help you locate those fish at those higher water levels. So I would say mid to high tide is my favorite time to throw topwater, but I mean, it still is a great bait when the tide is low. One thing you never want to do with redfish is ever stop that topwater plug while you're working it. 99% of the time that fish is going to get up on that plug. You might slow it down or stop it, and he's going to blow off of it. Every once in a while, you'll see one eat a topwater plug sitting still or getting paused while you're maybe trout fishing, letting that topwater sit for a second. I see it, you know, on topwaters. I see it when throwing flies to them. I see it when throwing soft plastics or hard baits to them. You start moving that bait, that fish gets in pursuit of that bait, and it stops, and that redfish spooks and blows off of it, and you're not gonna get another chance of that fish. A lot of times, if that fish surges up behind your topwater plug and he's not quite eating it, I'll oftentimes speed that topwater plug up. That's what's gonna happen naturally if a bait fish is getting chased by a redfish. And so that's what I'll try to imitate with the topwater plug. But slowing it down and stopping it is the kiss of death. You do not want to do that while topwater fishing for redfish. Thanks for checking my video out, guys. Hopefully you've learned something you can apply to your fishery as far as topwater fishing goes this spring and summer. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't done it, you got to try it. Watching a fish come up and blow a topwater plug up on the surface is about as cool as it gets. So get out there, give it a shot. If you liked the video, subscribe below. Feel free to leave me a comment, ask any questions, and hope to see y'all out on the water this spring. Catch them up. Later.